News alert from the nation's capital, where D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is calling for out-of-state National Guard troops to get out of D.C. after she accused the federal government of infringing on that city's rights. She's reportedly having some 200 troops evicted from their hotel this morning. Utah Senator Mike Lee slammed that move last night with Shannon.
They're being evicted. That the office of the mayor of the city of Washington has ended their contract with the Marriott Marquis Hotel. They'll get off at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and I'm told at that point they'll have to go gather their things and go find another place to stay because the mayor's office canceled their contract. That's not right.
This is the results of the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing, or what the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is supposed to be doing. This is so sad. Whenever you call people in from other parts of the country to come and protect your city, and now you cannot provide a safe haven for them to stay in during the time that they're in your city. This is total chaos. This is a disgrace. An absolute disgrace. This is the results of what happens whenever you have a nation that has basically become antichrist to the point that they did not want to hear what the individual is telling you right now pertaining to the messenger giving forth the message. This is what happens to a nation where basically the Bible says that God will allow for the wicked to turn upon to the wicked so that they can consume each other. This is where we're at, folks. In the middle of a crisis pertaining to a pandemic, all these major outlashes that has been going on throughout these cities, people brutalizing law enforcement brutalizing their citizens looting and robbing. This is what happens whenever things get disarray to the point that you got entirely too many chiefs and not enough Indians. This is so sad to watch stuff like this unfold on TV, especially in the 21st century, whenever we're supposed to be the greatest nation in the world, and we're supposed to have the best technology in the world, and we're supposed to be able to communicate better today than what we've ever communicated with before. This is it's bone chilling. It's sickening to listen to stuff like this. Listen to this, please.
Now, the mayor is citing the Third Amendment to the Constitution, so this is a big debate brewing this morning. Our correspondent, Kristen Fisher, live from the White House.
Citing the Third Amendment. Let's forget about our responsibilities and our morals. Let's just recite some sort of an amendment, and we'll make it all go away.
With more details. Good morning, Kristen.
Well, Ed, so far the mayor's office has not confirmed that this is happening. We reached out to them again this morning, but have not heard back. But if this did happen, or if this does happen, it would mark a major escalation between the city's Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser and President Trump. Now, this is all coming from Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who told our Shannon Bream last night that there are more than 1,200 National Guard troops from 10 states that are being kicked out of all D.C. hotels. He says the latest report that he received was that they may have to sleep on cots at the D.C. Armory.
They came here at the request of their country, and now in the middle of it, in the middle of a deployment, in the middle of their fourth consecutive all-nighter, they're being told they're not welcome there. That is unpatriotic. It's unacceptable.
Now, the D.C. mayor has been very critical of the president's decision to bring in National Guard troops to enforce law and order in these streets. And while Mayor Bowser did not say anything about what Senator Lee is accusing her of doing in that interview last night, she did question the president's legal authority to call in National Guard troops from other states to the District of Columbia. Listen here.
Because of our lack of statehood, the federal government can encroach on our city streets in the name of protecting federal assets. And so that's what's been done here. I think it's unprecedented that state troopers from other states have been brought into the district.
Now, today, President Trump is going to be heading up to Maine to tour a company that manufactures those swabs that are used in coronavirus testing. But first, Ed, as you guys reported at the top of the hour, we've just learned that President Trump is now going to be holding a news conference about these latest economic numbers at 10 a.m.
All right, we'll be watching. We'll go there live. Kristen Fisher, thank you. Sandra?
Right. As we anticipate that, much more in the fight over troops in our nation's capital with Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who just returned from his own Air National Guard duty to help stop violence and looting. We will get his thoughts on all of that. Plus, the federal authorities have blamed Antifa for instances of rioting and looting across the country, and now they say they have the evidence to back it up.
We're seeing people who are exploiting this situation to pursue violent extremist agendas, anarchists like Antifa and other agitators.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage.
My God. Good luck to all of us is what the Windmill Ministries continues to preach every time we put out a message to the general public.
Square, right across from the
Let's back up. Right.
reportedly in the hospital this morning after they were injured in a lightning strike in Washington, D.C. It happened around midnight near Lafayette Square. Right.
Wow. Check that out. That's a heck of a bolt of lightning right there, isn't it?
The officer's injuries are said to be serious but not life-threatening.
We have evidence that Antifa and other similar extremist groups, as well as actors of a variety of different political persuasions, have been involved in instigating and participating in the violent activity.
Attorney General William Barr right there confirming evidence of Antifa and other groups hijacking some protests to incite arson and looting. Here to react is Republican Congressman from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, good morning.
Hey, Ed, what's up?
Fantastic. Good to have you. I want to get to Antifa and all of that in a moment, but we've got this breaking news overnight where Utah Senator Mike Lee told our own Shannon Bream that the Utah National Guard personnel are allegedly being kicked out of their D.C. hotels because the mayor doesn't want them. You just came back from your own tour of duty with the Air National Guard, as I understand it. What in the world's going on here?
So if this is true, it's ridiculous. I mean, remember 2 weeks ago when the Democrats were outraged over the fact that, some Guard members had 89 days of orders and not 90, and that would disallow them to have 3 months, of early retirement. And obviously President Trump hates the National Guard. That was the indication. Now you have the mayor of D.C., in essence, threatening to evict the National Guard. And if this is true about the hotel issue, I mean, it's a shame. So in essence, what she would be saying is she would have the National Guard stay in tents, or maybe they have to be at a Super 8 in Virginia because this hotel's too nice, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'll give you a chance to clear your throat there while I read this. The supporters of Mayor Bowser are citing the Third Amendment to the Constitution, which is obviously very serious. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So I want to press you on that. How do you square that? If the mayor citing the Constitution, eventually that amendment to the Constitution, and saying that if she doesn't want them there, she doesn't have to have them.
Well, she doesn't have to have the National Guard or the military in her home. And by the way, that also includes Title 10. It's not necessarily Title 32. These are military members under state orders, so they're under the orders of the governor. But she doesn't have to have them in her home. She doesn't, even if the city owns the hotel, I mean, that's a hotel. That's a hotel that signs a contract with the National Guard unit. It has nothing to do with quartering in the Third Amendment. I mean, otherwise, we're going to be getting into the whole thing of, you know, the guy that owns all the Marriotts, the guy that owns all the Hiltons can say the military can't stay there. That was not the intention of the Third Amendment by any means.
All right, I want to get to what the Attorney General said yesterday with Antifa. He also talked about injuries to law enforcement personnel. Take a listen, we'll talk about it.
From Saturday until today, there were 114 injuries to law enforcement, most of those to federal agents, and most of those inflicted right around the White House.
Reaction to that, and tell us what you saw up close with your National Guard duty. Were you seeing mostly peaceful protests? Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I saw mostly peaceful. We kind of got up to where we were going right after basically the violence happened, and it was peaceful after that. But what you're looking for in that process is signs of Antifa. Antifa, anybody that denies they were in there, I have no idea why they'd be defending them. But what you're looking for is Antifa where they're working as scouts. They actually have basically a rank structure. You'll see some of them on bikes as runners. They usually act alone. And what they'll do is stand behind legitimate protesters and throw, whether it's bricks or bottles or, you know, body excrement, to try to get the police to attack the protesters so they can get it on video and create more outrage. That's their whole goal here, is instability and an overthrow of the system. And they think that the more they can inflame this, the more successful they'll be. 100% they're involved. Doesn't mean they're all Antifa, of course, but they're trying to agitate the crowds.
Despite all of that, Speaker Nancy Pelosi is upset about the National Guard intervening. Take a listen to what she said. I'll give you a chance to react.
Soldiers on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Bureau of Prisons officers in Lafayette Square, the National Park Service doing that. States have sent in National Guard troops from other states. By what authority do these National Guard people come in from other states? By what authority? What is the mission? What is the chain of command? Who is in charge? We want some answers.
Well, you just came home. What was the chain of command? Can you answer those questions from her?
Yeah, well, first off, D.C. has a different chain of command. Her state has used their own National Guard, by the way, so maybe she should ask the governor about that chain of command. It goes to the governor. The president can pay and federalize it when it comes to D.C., because this is a district where there's no governor. It's incredible. And by the way, yeah, Guard troops were guarding the Lincoln Memorial. It also didn't get vandalized when they were. I could imagine if Chicago, that was getting torn up repeatedly, as the mayor of Chicago was saying that the Guard isn't trained for this situation. If they'd have been standing in front of some of these businesses, they would never have been looted. Where I was, where the National Guard was, there was peace, because it allowed peaceful protests to occur and it allowed the police to go out and police dynamically. Quit denigrating the Guard, Democrats. It's not going to help you in the long term.
All right, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, we certainly thank you for your service, and thanks for coming on.
You bet, Ed. See ya.
Sandra?
Next hour, President Trump will be holding a news conference just announced a short time ago after that stunning new jobs report out a short time ago for the month of May. It did show that unemployment in this country fell, and the U.S. economy did add 2.5 million jobs during the month of May. We're going to bring you his remarks live.
Airlines, look at it.
America, certainly in Philadelphia, but there's time now for healing. And of course, Dr. has
Mayor, unfortunately, we're having an audio problem. I can't hear you. We're going to take a quick break and come back, hopefully address it during the commercial break. That's what happens on live TV, and we'll hopefully talk some more on the other side. But coming up, we're watching the White House, where President Trump is going to speak about that May jobs report. He has already tweeted he is thrilled about it. But many are hoping that this won't mean that government stimulus will end. But first, small businesses, they were navigating a pandemic when their focus turned to protecting their stores from looting. One bookstore owners fight to stay open and educate communities. Our live coverage continues from Philadelphia.
People of this country expect when they sign a contract
with the U.S. government, that there will be laws, but there'll be justice. And so law and order. I remember a professor of mine years ago saying, liberty without order is a mess, but order without liberty is a menace. And what I see taking place is the White House engaging in very menacing activity and leading us down the trail toward a dictatorship where it is only the law of rule, not the rule of law.
You led the Defense Department, of course. Tell us about the significance of a former Defense Secretary James Mattis, appointed by President Trump, describing the president as mocking the Constitution, but also the sitting Defense Secretary Mark Esper defying the president on his repeated desire to deploy active U.S. military in the U.S. The significance of that public disagreement?
Well, first of all, Jim Mattis, an extraordinary soldier, notwithstanding what the president is trying to demean him by saying he's vastly overrated. One of the most honored and decorated and most admired military men in our history. But the difficulty is, I think there's a code of honor that Jim Mattis and others have always followed, that the commander-in-chief, you serve under him and at his pleasure, and you do so until you receive an illegal order, clearly illegal order, or he does something which strikes at the core of your conscience. And at that point, you have a choice. You can continue to serve him or her, or leave. And those are the choices we make. Jim Mattis left. He said, I can't serve this any longer, consistent with my own conscience and my duty to my men and women in service. So those are the choices that Secretary of Defense has.
And he did so voluntarily, although the president claimed falsely that he demanded his resignation. Interesting comments, notable, from Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski yesterday. She said this. She said, I felt like perhaps we were getting to a point where we can be more honest with the concerns we might hold internally and have the courage of our own convictions to speak up. She seemed to be referencing concerns among Republican lawmakers, private, not expressed publicly, about this president. Are those concerned Republican lawmakers, in your view, failing their duty, their country, if they're keeping such serious concerns to themselves?
I think there is a dereliction of duty across the board. H.R. McMaster wrote a book back when I was at the Pentagon, and all of us read it, namely that you should never allow the military to become used by politicians for a political objective. And when I signed on with President Clinton, I had an agreement with him. I said, I will do my very best to carry out the duties of this office, and I expect you will never ask me to participate in a political decision or a political activity. He said, absolutely. And so to see the military being used for a political purpose, it seems to me that undercuts the very notion that we have a military subservient or subordinate to the commander-in-chief. But the commander-in-chief cannot and should not politicize our military. It is the last institution I'm aware of that he hasn't been able to politicize successfully. He's politicized the Justice Department. He's tried to politicize the judiciary, my judges, my generals, my attorney general. And so now it's my military. It's not. It's not his military. It's the American people's military. And we are sworn to defend the Constitution, not to defend his office. So I find it very offensive that he would use our military to fire rubber bullets or mace or other pepper spray into the eye of innocent people in order to get a photo op. That's not a commander-in-chief. That's a dictator-in-chief.
Retired four-star Marine General John Allen wrote about the president's threat of military force. He said, quote, it may well signal the beginning of the end of the American experiment. That is quite a jarring statement. And I wonder, given also your concerns about racial division in this country, as demonstrated by Ahmaud Arbery's death.
Let's back up. Let's back up.
Signal the beginning of the end of it. He said, president's threat of military force. He said, quote, it may well signal the beginning of the end of the American experiment. That is quite a jarring statement. Experiment. That will signal the beginning of the end of the American experiment. That is quite a jarring statement. And I wonder...
Once more, I'm going to weigh in real quick here. According to the Bible, whenever it comes to we, the people, integrating with others, it is not it is not a suggestion, it is a requirement. Because the Bible is very clear towards saying, let the wheat grow with the tares, or you can turn it around if you want to. Let the tares grow with the wheat. The wheat are the godly, the tares are the ungodly. Let them grow together, integrate together until time of harvest. If you're a true Christian, you're going to be dependent upon the system to protect you and take care of you so that you won't have to get out here and take the law into your own hands. If you're a true Orthodox Christian, if you're a true wheat, and that's what the wheat is, it is Christians. The tares are the non-Christians, are the unbelievers, are the ones that could care less about the Bible and about their consciousness pertaining to heaven and hell. That was the same situation that David and I run into out here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. We were solely relying upon the law, the judicial system, the sheriff's department in taking care of us and protecting us. We done everything according to the book in hiring an attorneys and taking various people to court. And every time that we would take them to court, they wouldn't even get so much as a hand slap. What's the purpose of hiring an attorneys and going to court if you can't get to courts to punish the people that's doing the victimizing? Because this property got victimized several different times. Had it on film. Pictures of before and pictures of after. There was no doubt we got victimized. And as long as you have a judicial system that is functioning this way, you have a non-productive judicial system. Whenever you have, and trust me, I am totally against violence. I am totally against looting. I am totally against anybody trying to take the law into their own hands, because that is the primary purpose of the Christian society hiring these people or allowing for these people to exist so that they won't have to take the law into their own hands. Anybody that's out there right now in any of these cities that's creating havoc, hardship by trying to harm and hurt other people or trying to harm and hurt other people's property and claims to be a Christian, I would look at them and call them a bare-faced liar. Because a true Christian is supposed to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. If you're truly walking and talking under the pretense of the Holy Bible. That's the reason why the system is set up the way that the system is set up, so that we won't have to engage in such activities. But obviously, the system has failed. That's the reason why that I initiated the sword, because I felt like that the system had failed to the degree that the system was no longer taking care of the saints of God. You know, my job as a Christian leader is supposed to be on the pretense of being a shepherd. My job is to shepherd the sheep. Tell the sheep what the sheep is supposed to do and what the sheep is not supposed to do according to the alignment of the Bible. That's my primary job as me being a shepherd. To not only make sure that my life is in order, or trying to be in order, but also in trying to make sure that my sheep's life is in order. That's the shepherd's job, or the minister, or the evangelist, or the preacher, whatever terminology that you want to use. Minister, preacher, rabbi, whatever terminology you want to use. That's their jobs. It's obvious that because the system has failed, now the shepherds are basically having to take up arms in doing that in which what the system is supposed to be doing that they're not doing in regards to taking care of, once more, the sheep. Our job is to take care of the sheep. Our job is to take care of the wheat. It's not our job to take care of the immoral. It's not our job to take care of the demonic. It's not our job to take care of the evil. We are to try to persuade the evil and the demonic out of those activities to come over here to this side, to the Christian side, to live the Christian life. That's our job. But as far as us managing them, taking care of them, as far as us governing them, that's not our job. That's what the system is for. And obviously the system is failing. And because the system is failing, we are seeing total chaos on the streets of America right now, adding one calamity onto another. And I'm telling you right now, if it gets so bad that order is totally out the door, that's whenever God Almighty steps in, the same that he done during the era of Noah, during the era of Sodom and Gomorrah, during the era of Moses, and during the era of Jesus. That's whenever God Almighty steps in, and that's whenever you'll see stuff that you don't want to see, because the Bible is very, very clear. It is a very, very fearful thing to fall into the hands of an angry God. An angry God. It is a very fearful thing. And I think our government officials should know that. Because that's the reason why the president is trying to maintain some sort of law and order. It's really sickening of how that society has turned a deafened ear to the Christian leaders of this great country. It's really sickening in how that the church society around here locally did not want to support the man of God during the hour that he was to reveal his message to the people. And now this is all turned sour, not only against the wicked, but against the Christian society. It's turned sour. And I just don't know, we as a nation, if we're going to be self-sustainable in the next few months, in the next few years, of us being $25 trillion, because every time an event happens like this, it costs us in the billfold. It doesn't matter if it's a man-made calamity or if it's a supernatural nature calamity. Every time there's a calamity that breaks out like this, it costs the American people in the billfold. And we cannot continue to take on lick after lick, hit after hit, and think that we're going to be a self-sustaining nation. Because eventually the pillars will fall. And whenever that happens, you're talking about the collapsation of a nation. I mean, whenever you can no longer provide safety and security for the troops and the state troopers that you've called in from other states to come in and help protect your town, you got a problem. If you can't write the check at the end of the week or at the end of the month towards paying for these services, you got a problem. And I'm just afraid that that's where we're heading right now in all these major cities. And I'm also afraid that the tares can see this. And because the tares can see this, the tares is rising up, just like the Bible talks about. It says that in the last days, Satan will rise up in great wrath, because he knoweth his time is short. And until the Christian society decides to conform and reform, we as a Christian society are going to have to watch things occur in this great nation and upon to this planet such as we have never ever desired or dreamed of before, until we come together as a entity to go up against this evil, demonic, wicked force. We're basically on our own. And it's sad because that's not how the system was set up. It is so sad in what we're looking at right now. You know, whenever they get to spewing out stuff like they're talking about right here, the beginning of the end of the American experiment. The beginning of the end. So does that mean that we're going to go to communism? We're no longer going to have an open, free, fair democracy? Is that what they're trying to say here? Anytime there's an outbreak of maliciousness going on, that's why we have law enforcement either from the bottom or all the way to the top that's supposed to engage in maintaining law and order. It is apparent that we have lost, that the system has lost control of the tares that is making it that much harder on the Christian society. That was the argument that David and I had out here because we wasn't getting no results done. A matter of fact, it didn't begin with David and I. It actually began with David. David could not get no results. Anytime you have two witnesses, Jeff and Gary Jackson, both of them are brothers, was adopted by our uncle, which would be my dad's brother, that was witnesses to the fact of what went on out here on his own property towards a family taking him down and taking his own gun and putting it to his head and then stealing the gun and then walking around telling everybody it was just like taking candy from a baby, and you take it to the courts and the courts throw it out. Anytime you do that to a family or to the citizens of your county, you're letting down the citizens. It's dereliction of duty. And that happened way before I ever come back here in 2014. That event happened in 2010. Right before my father died. It was an outbreak of all these demons that was coming at us from every direction you could think of. And I wasn't even on the property at the time. I was out doing my stuff out in the field. Going from city to city, going from state to state. It wasn't until 2014 whenever I come back here. And then whenever I come back here, sure enough, all hell busted loose. And it wasn't that we was busting the hell loose. It was the hell that was coming to us. It was coming to our front door. And Tommy Moore and various law enforcement agencies know this. And they sat back and allowed it. That's dereliction of duty. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Especially whenever you hire attorneys and you go about it in the proper process and you still can't get nothing done. And ultimately, in the end, instead of them punishing the right people, I was the one that got punished. Well, it wasn't until the hand of God started moving upon the situation towards watching people around in this area dropping like flies. That's whenever the community started wising up towards thinking maybe we need to leave those people alone down there. In other words, it took God to intervene. It wasn't the courts. It wasn't the judicial system. It wasn't Tommy Thomas or Tommy Moore that intervened. It was God that intervened. And they know it. Because they was trying to defeat us. They was trying to ruin us. They was trying to destroy us. And now the destruction has fell up onto their own laps. Just like I said, the Bible's very clear in stating how that God will get tired of this type of corruption, and he will allow the wicked to turn upon to the wicked so that they will consume each other. And that is where we're at right now here as a great nation here in the 21st century in the year 2020. What is this? June the 6th, June the 7th, June the 8th, something like that. I don't even have my calendar in front of me right now. But these are the things that occurs whenever you're disproportionalized with the system. And I'm just not talking about disproportionalized with the system towards being $25 trillion in debt and over 2.3 incarcerated prisoners in jail. I'm talking about from A to Z. Whenever you no longer have a court system that is functioning on behalf of the just, or on behalf of the wheat, or on behalf of the godly. It is so sad.
And also your concerns about racial division in this country as demonstrated by Ahmaud Arbery's death. Is that how serious the situation is for this country right now?
I think it is serious. I think we are at that tipping point. A former Supreme Court Justice, Brandeis, said that when government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for the law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy. And so we can't afford to have the government become a lawbreaker. The police who executed George Floyd, Mr. Arbery, those were basically lynchings. Now, my wife 15 years ago was very much involved in going to the United States Senate and begging them, along with her friends, to say, pass a resolution apologizing for the United States Senate failing to condemn lynching, failing to pass laws that prevent lynching. You know what? The Republican majority at that time said, okay, only by a voice vote, only on Monday night. So the members who didn't want to go on record as being opposed to lynching didn't have to be seen. And here we are today, the Senate debating, making lynching a federal crime. And one senator saying, no, it goes too far. These were lynchings that took place in Minneapolis and in Georgia. And we ought to stand up and condemn them because that is a case of extrajudicial killing. That is murder. Those were lynchings. And the Senate ought to be ashamed if it doesn't pass this law making it a crime.
I should remind our viewers, as they're listening to you, that you were a former Republican senator yourself. Secretary Cohen, thanks very much.
Well, a stunning jobs report, jobs coming back, but not for everyone. The racial disparities in these numbers clear. We'll talk about it ahead.
That was serious enough that I want to go back and listen to this one more time. I want you to listen to this expert and what he's saying and how he's saying this. And I realize I may be taking up some of your time, but it's important enough that I feel like that it needs to be repeated. Listen to his thoughts of everything that is unfolding right now, presently, in front of our very eyes. I'll get about half of it.
Jim Mattis left. He said, I can't serve this any longer, consistent with my own conscience and my duty to my men and women service. So those are the choices that Secretary of Defense has.
And he did so voluntarily, although the president claimed falsely that he demanded his resignation. Interesting comments, notable, from Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski yesterday. She said, I felt like perhaps we're getting to a point where we can be more honest with the concerns we might hold internally and have the courage of our own convictions to speak up. She seemed to be referencing concerns among Republican lawmakers, private, not expressed publicly, about this president. Are those concerned Republican lawmakers, in your view, failing their duty, their country, if they're keeping such serious concerns to themselves?
I think there is a dereliction of duty across the board.
There you go.
H.R. McMaster wrote a book back when I was at the Pentagon, and all of us read it. namely that you should never allow the military to become used by politicians for a political objective. And when I signed on with President Clinton, I had an agreement with him. I said, I will do my very best to carry out the duties of this office, and I expect you will never ask me to participate in a political decision or a political activity. He said, absolutely. And so to see the military being used for a political purpose, it seems to me that undercuts the very notion that we have a military subservient or subordinate to the commander-in-chief. But the commander-in-chief cannot and should not politicize our military. It is the last institution I'm aware of that he hasn't been able to politicize successfully. He's politicized the Justice Department. He's tried to politicize the judiciary, my judges, my generals, my attorney general. And so now it's my military. It's not. It's not his military. It's the American people's military.
Right.
And we are sworn to defend the Constitution, not to defend his office. So I find it very offensive that he would use our military to fire rubber bullets or mace or other pepper spray into the eye of innocent people in order to get a photo op. That's not a commander-in-chief. That's a dictator-in-chief.
Retired four-star Marine General John Allen wrote about the president's threat of military force. He said, quote, "It may well signal the beginning of the end of the American experiment." That is quite a jarring statement. And I wonder, given also your concerns about racial division in this country, as demonstrated by Ahmaud Arbery's death, is that how serious the situation is for this country right now?
I think it is serious. I think we are at that tipping point. A former Supreme Court Justice, Brandeis, said that when government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for the law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy. And so we can't afford to have the government become a lawbreaker. The police who executed George Floyd, Mr. Arbery, those were basically lynchings. Now, my wife 15 years ago was very much involved in going to the United States Senate and begging them, along with her friends, to say, pass a resolution apologizing for the United States Senate failing to condemn lynching, failing to pass laws that prevent lynching. You know what? The Republican majority at that time said, okay, only by a voice vote, only on Monday night. So the members who didn't want to go on record as being opposed to lynching didn't have to be seen. And here we are today, the Senate debating, making lynching a federal crime, and one senator saying, no, it goes too far. These were lynchings that took place in Minneapolis and in Georgia. And we ought to stand up and condemn them, because that is a case of extrajudicial killing. That is murder. Those were lynchings. And the Senate ought to be ashamed if it doesn't pass this law making it a crime.
I should remind our viewers, as they're listening to you, that you were a former Republican senator yourself. Secretary Cohen, thanks very much.
It pretty well spells it out. We as a society, towards what should be expected and what should be rejected. It began 30 plus years ago, whenever a group of people thought that they was going to undermine God and undermine God's people in putting us where we are right now in 2020, the year of the Jubilee. We have the Reagans, the Bushes, the Quayles, the Heinz 57s, the Clintons, and yes, even the Obamas to thank towards where we are right now. And of course, whenever you take a president that's come on board, such as Donald Trump, that has inherited such behavior as this, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't, because the system itself is basically crumbling right up underneath his feet, and he sees it, And there's nothing that he can do other than to hang on and watch it crumble. You keep in mind, it was the Europeans that brought this type of hate over here towards thinking that they was going to be able to rule society. It was the Europeans, the white man, that spoke to the red man and said, give up your guns, give up your arms, and we will take care of you. Well, now they've asked the same thing out of the black man, and now the black man is retaliating on levels of how that the red man retaliated. Well, now the system is crumbling up onto itself. Once more, it was the white Europeans that thought that they was going to be able to rule the roost. And now, it's the white Europeans that can't even take care of themselves, much less take care of the red man or take care of the black man and treat all fairly and treat people with dignity and respect. No wonder the millennials, the younger generation, is rearing up the way that they're rearing up right now, is because they feel like that they are in a hopeless society. They feel like that they are in a hopeless state, and this hopeless state is a state that basically this White House helped to put us all in. And it's really, really sad because it has trickled down from the White House to the schoolhouse, to the schoolhouse, to the church house, all the way down to the outhouse of where we're at right now. And I realize that may not sound appropriate towards the way that I have tarnished this, but the facts matter, and if the shoe fits, wear it, the way that my grandmother used to always tell us. If the shoe fits, wear it. Because the pot can't call the kettle black any longer. In other words, not only did the white European man fail the red man, but now it's failed the black man, and now it's failed its own race. So these racial tensions has got to do with we as a society over here in the experiment that we was supposed to have evolved and segregated into society to the point that we was supposed to have interacted with all races, all people, including Muslims and Jews and Greeks all over the world.
We're going to take that live when it gets underway. The report also sending stocks soaring in the first half hour of trading on Wall Street. You see it there on your screen, up about 653 points. We're breaking down what that means for you. Meantime, we're also closely following the ongoing nationwide protests now entering their 11th day. Day 10 saw tense yet mostly peaceful protests around the nation. We are live on the ground in Minneapolis.
We have done what we were supposed to have done. As a society, we integrated with all these different cultures all over the planet. Once more, it's the system that is failing to take care of the Christian society, and now the system can't even take care of its own society. The system has been broken. That's the reason why that my brother and I put the broken cross out here at 291 Thompson Road. America is, in fact, in crisis. And if America is in crisis, odds are the whole planet's probably in crisis. Once more, we're seeing the development of biblical Bible prophecy come true, just as the Bible says that in the last days, Satan will rise up in great wrath because he knoweth his time is short. Once more, the very signs that these people are holding in their hands is contradictory to all fairness, because instead of saying Black Lives Matter, instead of saying red man's lives matter, instead of saying yellow lives matter, instead of saying Russian lives matter, instead of saying American lives matter, it should say all lives matter. All lives matter. That was part of the experiment whenever Lincoln said what Lincoln said before he got assassinated, that all men are created equal. All lives matter. Jesus said, whosoever calleth upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Whosoever. All lives matter. Not just black lives, not just white lives. All lives matter. People mixed up, man. They're mixed up. They're pissed off. They're wanting to take their anger out on society. And the thing about it is, all they're doing is exacerbating the problem, because possibly, maybe, we could have reformed and bounced back after this coronavirus was through with us. Now the coronavirus is spiking, getting worse in other cities and in other states. Now people are getting sicker. Now you're adding insult to misery by getting out here tearing up stuff and looting and robbing. And every time we call the National Guard out or anybody else, it costs money. All this stuff costs money. This is hitting the American people in the back pockets. It is going to cause the ruin of us. It is going to cause the ruin of us, because we cannot be a self-sustainable nation under these type of crises that continue to keep hitting us again and again and again and again. But now you try to explain that. You try to explain that to this group of people right here, and this is just one group that I'm looking at right now. From here to here, I estimate 3,000 to 5,000 people. From here to here, which is probably a quarter of a mile. Right at a quarter of a mile distance right there. You're looking somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 people right there. And that's just in one town. I've been watching this all week. There were some places on the Brooklyn Bridge last night that I know had to have 10,000 people just in one confined area, or in Los Angeles. This is insanity. This is not the right way to repair the system. This is adding insult to injury. And there's no doubt Donald Trump is in a hither right now, in between a hard place and a rock, because he's not a professional politician. He don't know how to deal with all this stuff other than brute force. But to take our military that we've called upon and pull the biscuit out of their mouths after promising them that we're going to take care of them in a certain area, that goes beyond wrong. That's just asinizing. I've never in my life heard of a city or a town or a state that would be willing to do something like that. Call up all your state troopers to have them come in. We're gonna camp out down here, but you don't have a place for them to camp? Or the place that we had for them to camp is too good of a place, so now we're going to put them over here in this camp. In other words, we're going to pull the biscuit out of their mouths. We never should have gave them the hotel. We should have just allowed them to sleep on their cots. Oh my God. Whenever you have the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. You have anarchy. You have chaos. You have a failed system in place. And that's what we're witnessing here in the 21st century in 2020. I really don't think George Fred would have wanted all this hostility to have been broken out on account of his death. And I'm pretty sure his brothers and his daughter and his wife can verify that from what I've heard about this gentleman who passed away, in which, God forbid, the way that he passed away. I feel so sorry for the family and the way that he had to die. And to turn him into a martyr is one thing, but to turn him into a martyr in the face of violence, in the face of resistance, in the face of corruption, like is hitting the streets right now, you think that's the proper way to memorialize somebody's death? This man's dead. He can't speak up about what's happening right now towards people using him as a prop. His family had no idea that he was going to be used as a prop. This just come out of nowhere. Whenever you have somebody like Martin Luther King that's standing up against the system, not only did himself realize where his position was in society, but his family did too, in recognizing that he possibly could have to pay the ultimate sacrifice for believing and preaching what he was believing and preaching during the time that he was preaching it, towards turning him into a martyr. His family recognized that, and I'm sure in some degree they accepted that. But this George Frederick, he didn't have no say so in being an example out into the eyes of society like this. This has been pushed upon to him and his family in a way that I know he wouldn't want all this violence and all this hostility pertaining to memorializing his death this way in Minneapolis, in the town that he's from. Please recognize what people are doing right now. Good luck to all of us. Coming from the Windmill Ministries here at 291 Thompson Road. Good luck to each and every one of us as we continue to see these things unfold right in front of our very eyes. That, like I told you earlier, this will affect us one way or the other. It's already affecting us, but it could profoundly affect us once we start having gas shortages and tire shortages and food shortages and other type of shortages, clothes shortages and everything else. This could affect us profoundly.
Washington, D.C., but we want to start with this shocker of a jobs report out this morning. The Labor Department reporting that we saw job gains of 2.5 million. That is the biggest monthly increase ever. The unemployment, while still in the double digits, fell from 14.7% to 13.3%.
The reason why is because people were stuck up in their houses. They was quarantined. They decided to step out of their houses and go back to work. These are supposed to be the professionals, and they're acting like, oh, it's an alarming number. We expected that number after a pandemic lockdown. Once more, if the blind lead the blind, they shall both leadeth off into the ditch. May God have mercy on all of us. May God bless America in the things that we're going to have to endure just in the next few days, the next few weeks, and within the next few years.